Hello. Hello. Good day, good evening, good afternoon. There we go. So welcome again, everybody. I see that there's been a little, what we call attrition. There's about half the people coming to class on class 3 than there were on day 1. It's a hard class. It's very demanding. There's a lot of information, and don't worry about it. Have fun, absorb what you can. Tim will be teaching it after ACI 12, so you can come back for a repeat performance. It's the next one after 12, right? And he's doing them in order. And yeah, I really encourage you to stick with it. As Geshe Michael says, if it's easy, you're not learning anything. So we also have a lot to cover today. We have not only class 3 to cover, but we have the debate section from class 2, which I didn't cover on Thursday. So I'm going to try and squish it all together. So we're going to have what's called a horse race. Try and do it as focused as possible and as concentrated as possible. And hopefully we will get through all of it. If not, so that we don't get behind, I may end up going over. And those of you who have to leave can leave, and you can watch the video afterwards. So without further ado, let's just start. So this is only class 3, and it is the door to emptiness. So with that in mind, let us create this beautiful world that we want to live in, that's safe for every being, that they have everything they ever needed, that they're happy and having fun. And so imagine that, and let's offer this mandala in whatever language you want to offer it in. I go for refuge to the Buddha's Dharma and Sangha. Oh, wait a minute. Here is the great earth, filled with the smell of incense, setting my motivation first, covered with a blanket of flowers, the great mountain, the 4 continents, wearing a jewel of the sun and moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I achieve enlightenment. By the power of the goodness that I do by teaching and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha until I achieve enlightenment. By the power of the goodness that I do in teaching and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha until I achieve enlightenment. By the power of the goodness that I do in teaching and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for the benefit of every living being. So, I think most of you know this picture. Right? This is our planet jumping picture. In Tibetan, it's called plunjup. What is it? You can just sit right where you are and send out copies of yourself to serve every single living being in the universe. Now, how cool would that be? You would be helping them with whatever they need, right? All the time, and you don't even have to think about it. I think it would be such a cool thing to do that. So that is the goal of this class. To become a being like that. And to get there, you basically have to remove every mental affliction forever. It's called nirvana. And we're not going to stay just there, are we? That's like the second step. First, the direct perception of emptiness, reaching nirvana, and then reaching full enlightenment. So part of the definition of nirvana is to be able to remove our mental afflictions permanently. Because, as I said, the first step is seeing emptiness directly. And I haven't experienced it, but I've been told that just a few hours before emptiness, you will understand dependent origination. And so tonight, our topic is called Dura. Everybody say Dura. Dura. Right? And within the study of Dura, you understand something called Chochok. Say Chochok. Chochok, Chu is Dharma or object. Chok is the highest, so the supreme object. You understand perfectly what dependent origination is. And to reach it, you have to study emptiness, the flip side. And it is those last moments of the path of preparation. The most important thing to study within that then is Chi Chedrak. Please say Chi Chedrak. Chi Chedrak means quality and characteristics. What are we talking about? We're talking about our mental images. We're talking about how we create our reality. And in those moments, if we can see how lower reality works, if we understand how it works, you'll perceive higher reality directly very shortly thereafter. And after you've seen emptiness directly, you are ready to remove your mental afflictions and reach nirvana. And after that, you can reach Buddhahood. And it's no more than 7 lifetimes after having the direct perception of emptiness. that you reach that state. So there is a direct line between what we're studying today and what you're going to cook to becoming an angel. When I first got this class from Geshe Michael, maybe back in 1997 or 8, I don't remember, somewhere back then, it just set my mind going. And it was like, well, when is a car not a car? If I see different kinds of trees, different shapes, what identifies them as trees? Where does my me end and you begin? They're really good questions. They really get your mind going. So today we're going to go into quality and characteristics. And this is the essence of the Pramanavartaka. And Master Dharmakirti's thing is to get us to understand why we perceive things the way we do. The different ways we perceive things. And using logic is one of those ways. A direct perception is another way to see something. And Master Dharmakirti covers both. How do we create mental images? How do we see things with a mental image? That is what we call dependent origination. So the first thing, when you really understand dependent origination, it's only a few hours before you have the direct perception of emptiness. So it's super, super important. Eka, am I talking too fast for you? Okay. I got you down in the corner watching. So the second thing, and it's difficult to understand, you need a great deal of powerful, good seeds to understand this. You need what we call kelwa. Everybody say kelwa. Kelwa is this collection of good spiritual energy, and it gives you the ability to perceive what we're going to talk about today, to understand it, to grok it, to get it. And if you don't have a good enough collection, it's super frustrating. So you can judge for yourself if you need to gather together some more good seeds by how difficult this material is to understand. How do we gather good seeds? We take care of others. We help spread the teachings. We do all of the things that Master Shantideva talks about to collect good seeds. It's like going into retreat. Before you go into retreat, if you don't want to be kicked out, you have to do some heavy duty seed planting. Serving your teacher is another one, right? So if your Kelwa cup is only half full, you could see that it would be useful for your future that you would work on planting seeds. If it's not so full or almost empty or empty, what's going to happen? You're going to say, oh, these teachings are too difficult. I cannot understand them. Go out and help someone else understand something and dedicate it to you understanding this. Also, be patient. Ask for blessings. Work on your good deeds and thoughts and dedicate it to understanding this. It takes time. It could save your life. Keep coming back to it. So there are two levels to understand this material. Superficially, where you go home and think, oh, I understand that. And extremely profound. This is the one that we're going for. We are aiming for this last one. And it will probably be confusing. And if it's not clear to you, don't worry. Take one page of the reading, chew on it for 2 or 3 weeks. And if you get one of the arguments in the reading, that will be the key to understanding all the other ones. It's deep. And it is the real ticket to emptiness. In the Madhyamika, they call this the key to Madhyamika. This is the key to understanding emptiness. So rejoice. You've got the key in your hand to understand emptiness, right? And just like opening any door, you need to learn to figure out how to do that. Plant your seeds. As I said, I took this course 3 times and cooked it. I love coming back to it. So, Chichedrak. And you see this picture, but we'll get to it again in a little bit. So this place, Chochok, is very, very close to understanding dependent origination. If you see the meaning of dependent origination directly, right, you are within 2 or 3 hours of seeing emptiness directly. They are the last moments of the path of preparation. And then you flop over into Tonglam. Tonglam is the direct perception of emptiness. So it's an honor to study this subject. And for me, it's an honor to teach it. How many people are here this morning? I can't see it. There's 51 people out of the whole world studying this today. Could you maybe be special people? Maybe. So back to Chichedra, back to this picture. Quality and characteristics. It's a good starting point. It's not going to bring us to the direct perception of emptiness, but it's a good starting point. Chi is a general category. It's like an umbrella. Chedrak is a specific member of that category. You could also call it sets and subsets if you know the set theory. If a car is the general, the chi, as in this picture, then Chevys, Fords, Toyotas, Nissans, Teslas are specific instances or subsets of, quote, car. They are what we call jedraks. Now, if we go down a little further, every specific chedrak can also be a general chi. All the different Toyotas there are, all the different Fords there are, right? You could have, old Fords, new Fords. I like to think about Toyotas because I know them better. Old Toyotas, new Toyotas, Prius, Camry, Tercel. They would all be chedraks of chi. Right? And each of those chedraks could probably also be a chi with their own subset. If we were to check and to see if an old Toyota is a chedrak of a chi, what do? You wipe out all the Toyotas in the world. So if we get rid of all the Toyotas in the world, right? Is there still a chi? Is there still other cars? Right, of course. So that's one indication that it might be a chedrak. It might be a subset. Because you don't wipe out all the cars when you get rid of all the Toyotas. So they are subset. There are more meanings of chi chedrak, and some of them are just what we call nominal, not real. Like sometimes natural nirvana means emptiness itself, right? It's just a nominal name. Is it a kind of nirvana? No. Can you call it nirvana? Yes. You can call it nirvana, but it's not a real nirvana because it's not overcoming your mental afflictions forever. Just nirvana. The pen has emptiness. But knowing that hasn't overcome any mental afflictions. It has what we call natural nirvana. So that's another division which is not real. It's just given that name. So what is the definition of chi? And you might want to take note of this because it's on your homework. It is that existing thing which subsumes multiple things. Which are of its type. What does it mean? I'll say it again. That existing thing which subsumes the multiple things, which are of its type. Big word, subsumes. It means it covers everything. Right? It just means that the general quality and many things are characteristic of it. It's a general quality. What's the general quality? Carness. Does it have carness? We wouldn't say that this has carness, right? We wouldn't say that. So it's not it's not a chedrak of this group. So you can pick anything, like you could pick the chi of pens and then all the different kinds of pens I have here, right? We have a red pen and a black pen and a blue pen and a green and white one. Those would be the chedrots. Are you getting the idea of what chis and chedrots are? Hope so. Because now there are 3 divisions of chis. They are called nominal, just like nirvana is called nominal, because only one is the real chi. The other 2 are not. So let's talk about those. The first one is what we call rikchi. Rik means family, type, class, category. Chi means general or generality, and it is an unchanging thing. It is a general as far as a type or quality, a general type or kind, which has individual things which are characteristic of it, right? So it's a class, rikchi, a class or a family, formally defined as that existing thing which subsumes, there's that big word again, the multiple things which are of its type. I'll say it again. That existing thing which subsumes the multiple things which are of its type. It's a general quality, karnas, and many things are characteristic. So a classical example is sheja. Say sheja. Sheja. Sheja are knowable things. So put your thinking cap on and think carefully about this. Think of car as, quote, car, or the quality of karnas. It's the difference between a car, the car, and car. This you're going to have to cook. What is the difference between a car, the car, and car? What images come up in your mind when you hear these different ways of saying it? A car, the car, car. This is a life or death question. Carness, quote, car, is not the same as a car. Carness is a quality, an attribute, a nature. And then there are different objects in the world that possess it or are characteristic of that quality. If you say the car, there's only a singular thing there, right? The car. Is there a subset underneath it? And then there's a car. So for example, we again we're using cars here, Chevys, Fords, Toyotas, Nissans, Teslas. The way that your reality is occurring is closely tied to this question of karnas. The reason we're perceiving our reality the way we do is because, and what we're perceiving is wrong, because we're suffering. And the reason for that is directly related to understanding karnas and the quality, kar. And it's very subtle. This is something you gotta cook. And get together and talk to your friends about it. It's like, wow, what do you mean? So this general quality, karnas, it's very important. And what does it mean? Think of kar as, quote, car, okay? Car, or the quality of karnas. If you think very, very carefully about this difference between a car, the car, and car, you are very close to understanding how you create your world. It is the crux of this class. It is the key to understanding your world and how it appears to you. Why you are perceiving the world the way you are. It is the key to getting out of samsara. So you have to get used to these terms. Karnas is a quality. Quote, kar is a quality or a nature. And our suffering is directly related to understanding karnas. And it's very, very subtle. And you have to work on it. Again, if you come to a point where you can understand it, you'll understand dependent origination. And that will trigger a day when you'll see it directly. And that will trigger the direct perception of emptiness. And then you will see your future enlightenment directly. You will know how many lifetimes you have left to live and the nature of those lifetimes. You'll know what you'll be doing and how you will live. You will see the Buddha directly in that day. You become an Arya or a superior being. And then you will never, ever doubt these truths. You will become very independent in everything going on in the world. You see the entire contents of the scriptures on emptiness, and you know they are true. They are called the four Arya truths. Nobody can tell you differently. Why? Because you saw it. You see it directly. You saw how things work directly. Your direct perception of emptiness is exactly equivalent to the direct perception of emptiness of a Buddha or an Arhat. To get there, you need to understand, quote, kar, chi chedra as kar and karnas as a quality. Chevy, Ford, Toyota as characteristic of that quality. Not a characteristic of like blueness or whiteness. Blueness, is a characteristic of this pen. A Toyota is characteristic of or typical of the quality car. So think about it. Pray to your Lama or somebody you respect to bless you to understand this. It's really helpful to have divine assistance. Ask them to help. Do some heavy, good karma collection. It will help. like something on the scale of building a house for your teacher. Something big, helping a lot of beings. The deeper meaning of the word general is quality. And the deeper meaning of the word characteristic is characteristic of. And then the second one is dunchi, meaning a generality. General as far as objects, also known as actual mental image. The chocolate sauce that is put on the ice cream. The element which is put on the object, but which is not the object. And it must have three things. This is a mental image of something which you have already seen. You mistake it for the actual object. And then you arrive at it by negating all that it is not. So the three elements of the definition that you need. The first is a mental image. Think about your refrigerator or something intimate. That image in your mind of your refrigerator is a dunchi. The mental image of something that you are familiar with, which you have already perceived, right? And then sometimes it's confusing. How am I going to put this? There is another kind of chi called drachi as opposed to dunchi. And it is a mental image of something you've heard about, but have yet to experience. So don't get them confused. Here we're talking about something you're intimate with. Could be your bed, could be, a person. And then the second part of that, remember there's three parts. You mistake it for the actual object. And at this point, the different schools in Tibetan Buddhism, they kind of diverge. So what they mean when they talk about this in Madhyamika is one thing, and what the Sautantrikas mean is another thing. So I'm giving you the one that relates to you seeing emptiness directly. And it's very similar to the Sautantrika position, but not quite exactly the same. The classical definition or explanation of a dunchi, as you can see here on this slide, is the appearance to the second instant of a conceptual state of mind, which is perceiving a water pitcher. So not the first moment, but the second moment of the opposite of all that is not the water pitcher of the second instant. So the opposite of all that a pen is not as I imagine it. While I perceive something, and that which I mistake for the real pen. A mental image of something you've already perceived, right? a pen. The opposite of all that a pen is not, as I imagine it. So you push out everything that you think of as not a pen. Not a pen, right? Well, I am perceiving something that I mistake for the real pen. I'm mistaking a mental image, a concept for something real. So you mistake the mental image for the actual object. All I'm seeing is colors and shapes. I can't even see the whole pen at once, right? I look at the tip point, I look at the top, my eyes scan it. Our minds, under the influence of seeds, organize this data. The tip, the rubber bit, the top that pushes down, the clip, right? It organizes the data into a certain object. Our mind fills in the blanks and creates a dunchi, a mental image of a pen. That's how we know that it's a pen. We have a mental image, even though these are not identical. And it creates this dunchi. We're actually staring at a mental image of a pen. So I want to tell you a story. You know, I keep showing you this picture of a pot on the stove. And this is a story that Geshe Michael told all those years ago when I think I first heard this story. In fact, the first class I ever went to with him. You put a pot of water on the stove to make tea for your lama, for your teacher. And you've been studying these concepts. You've been studying Chi Chedrak like crazy. And you're like cooking it in your mind. It's getting a headache from trying to figure it out. And you're staring at this pot. And then suddenly, you realize that you're not looking at a pot. You are looking at a mental image of a pot. Because all that is out there is a circle of silver and this, in this picture, a gold, copper colored handle, right? Little silver ring on the top. All your eye can see are clues, indications of a pot. It sees this long copper thing. It sees a silver round thing. It sees shiny. It sees, if you could see inside, little bubbles, right? Ovals forming where the bubbles are coming up, but they're not bubbles to your eye. They're just colors and shapes. The eye can't think. I'm seeing a pot of water. The eye is only seeing colors and shapes. And then the mind, ruled and dictated by your past seeds, organizes that data into this object. There's copper, there's silver, there's shiny. I'll put all that together. I think it's a pot. I think that's kind of how AI works. Gets all this information and then puts it together and identifies it. It's what our minds do. And our minds fill in the blanks. Your mind creates this dunchi, a mental image of a pot. And then you're staring. You're actually staring at an image of a pot in your mind. And then you think, that's the pot. We mistake it for the pot. All you're getting is sense data coming into your eyes, right? That's all you're getting. An ant, if they were crawling here, they wouldn't get very far. It'd be very hot, right? But an ant would see it differently. A dog would see the pen differently. An ant, if you were an ant, you'd go, "Ooh, this is a life-threatening object, this hot pot," validly. So it's no more a pot than it would be a hell realm for, for an ant. It is the pen thing. You perceive it however your karma is ripening. The ant is also mistaking their mental image of a burning mountain of metal, also mistaking that mental image as an external object. They are also looking at a dunchi, not a real object. What makes you human is the collection of your perceptions. It's not that there's an animal realm and your karma is throwing you into an animal realm. It's not there's a pre-existing human realm and your karma is throwing you into a human realm. Your karma is the human realm. The ant's karma is the animal realm. So I said there were 3 elements. Here's the third element. It's the way in which your past karma is forcing your mind to make mental images from the same data. It is what forces you into an ant's world or a dog's world. It is what makes tantric enlightenment possible. So if you see this turn into a paw, your karma is forcing you to see a dog or a cat or a bear's body, an animal's body. If you see this turn into golden crystal light, your seeds are forcing you to see an enlightened being's body. Got it? Dunchis are running your world, my world, our world. So when you mistake your dunchis for something out there, then you can like or dislike it. And then we're in trouble. You see how all of this is tying together? It's only when you think of an object out there, not depending on your own dunchis, that you have been forced to create by your seeds, by liking or disliking someone or something in the wrong way. Only then can you collect seeds by having these negative emotions. Dunchi has an intimate relationship with Rikchi, between karnas and your mental image. In your mind, when you think of a car, right? What is this connection? It will liberate you to see this connection. So the third element. Take everything in the world which is not a pen and cancel it. What's left? A pen. So this is arriving at something through negating everything it's not. What is left is the object. Like the car in the parking lot. You're looking for your car and you're getting rid of all the cars that aren't your car. All the motorcycles that are not your motorcycle, right? And this is according to the Sautantrikas, Pramanavartaka, and Master Dharmakirti. The mental image that we have going on in our head of this pen is a mental exercise. And our mind goes through that every time we perceive something. Think of all the seeds that have to be going off to do that. To cancel out everything that the pen is not, which leaves the image of the pen. Now, this will help a bit to understand at least how we're sorting things, but it's not the main point. It is more important for your enlightenment and more important for your tantric liberation to see how things are coming from your past karma. Some Buddhist schools, Tibetan Buddhist schools, think that the emptiness of something is the fact that it is the opposite of all which it is not. It is the negation of all that it is not. And that's not what emptiness is. And Master Dharmakirti spends a lot of time on describing it and how it plays a part in perceiving things. And it's not the emptiness of an object. If it were, we would have had a direct perception of emptiness every time we perceived something, right? So if your homework said, give an example of a dunji, you might say, the opposite of all that a pen is not, as I imagine it, while I perceive something. It is that which I mistake as a real pen. There will be a place in your reading where they'll say dunchis are false because everything is dakme. Dakme means selfless, meaning it has no nature of its own. Got to think about it. So the third kind of chi, I need to speed up here. The third kind of chi, say sokchi. Sokchi. Sok means a collection. So this is a physical collection of parts, and it's very close to the quality, but not a real quality. What is the difference between carness or quote car and the mental image you form when you perceive a car? This is a huge question in the Brahmavartaka. Is your past karmas forcing you to organize it that way? So sok means group or collection. Chi is general. An example here is a cup. It has a handle. It has a bottom. It has a belly. Traditionally, they use bumpa, meaning a water container. We've graduated to using cups because they're more common in our lives. Almost everybody has a cup or a mug. We don't have a water jug sitting in our house. So we use cups. Handle, bottom, belly. It's a collection of parts. So in your reading, you will see some Abhidharma philosophy. They use the example of all things that are composed of molecules, of atoms, the tiniest, components. All molecules are composed of 8 components, 4 qualities of earth, fire, wind, and water. And then something to do with the object of the senses of your eye, your nose, your tongue, your body. They leave out the object of sense of sound because sound is so fleeting. In ancient Abhidharma atomic theory, all physical objects are made up of particles, which include these 8 different qualities. So this would be its sok-chi-ness, right? Like any particular car. This is the chi we can get rid of right away. This is gross physical collection of a bunch of pieces and parts. Chi is like intellectual carness. It's not a particular car made up of its parts. That's on a very gross level. Seeing that or seeing how a car is a collection of its physical parts, it's not gonna get you very far to seeing dependent origination or emptiness. It's not gonna get you very far to understanding how you perceive or conceptualize carness. When you see a car or think of a car, that process could get you enlightened. It could make you see emptiness directly. It is the key to seeing emptiness. So in this unsophisticated version, it doesn't get you to see dependent origination quickly. In the more sophisticated way, that does get you to see dependent origination, which does get you to see emptiness, which does remove all your suffering. Chedrak can mean characteristic of. So, gave an example of a cup. Another example is nupo. Nupo means a working thing. It's a synonym for changing thing. Anything that works, anything that does anything is automatically changing by doing something. Classical example is empty space. It's an unchanging thing. So nupo is a cup, a chedrak of the chi, right? Because working thing is a quality, and cup being the thing which is characteristic of that quality. Is cup characteristic of a working thing? Therefore, working thing is a general quality. Water pitcher or cup is characteristic of the quality called working thing. And there are 3 tests between a cup and a working thing. The 3 tests of whether something is a chi, or rather a chedrak, or not, right, is a subset. And it's hard. Don't get in mind that logic isn't important. If you could see, if you could come to see that all scriptures, meaning, and the Tibetan word for that would be ka, voice, words, was directly relevant advice to your personal enlightenment, Dham, we could call you a Kadampa. Right? That's what that word Kadampa means. It's a person who gets it. Je Tsongkhapa said, if you can get to the point where you can understand that the Buddha didn't say anything that didn't relate directly to your own enlightenment, you're really well along the path. And we will call you a Kadampa. So we're still talking about Chedroks here. And we're going to talk about Chedroks and Nupos. Let's discuss thing and working thing. Is a cup a working thing? Yeah. Cup is a working thing. Secure normally means you, but in scripture it can mean it. Nupo, working thing, is. Yin is is. Is a cup a working thing? Yeah, it's a working thing. Now we can use a all over the place. Is a cup a working thing? Is a Subaru a car? Is there anything which is car, which is not a member of the set called car? Because if there is, then it's not necessary to do this. How about motor vehicles? It's not a chedruk of cars, right? These two sets are equal, motor vehicle and car. We don't call one characteristic of that quality. Characteristic means those things which are typical of that, not the whole set of things which are equal to that. So car and motor vehicle are equivalent sets. They are not set and subset. Hang in there. I know it's a lot of information. It's something you're going to take off the shelf and think about later on, just filling you up at the moment. Yeah. So these equivalent sets are not enough to define a chedruk. If you want to prove that something is a member of a set, you have to say, one, it is what that set is. For a member of a set, or something characteristic of a specific quality, is that it be that thing, and there's other things in the set that aren't it. Car is a set, and then we can say Toyotas are characteristic of that set, and then there's other things in that set. There's Subarus, Teslas, Chevys, whatever. So they're not equal. There is a set and a subset. And then number two is a working thing related to be one is to be the other, and they share a relationship. So the characteristic, let's take a pen, shares a relationship with the quality working thing, such that to be one, a pen, is to automatically to be the other working thing. Being a pen is automatically to be a working thing. And then the last thing you have to be a good chedrok is this Kumayin Shing Nyupo Yang Yinpe Shi Tumpa. one thing which is both A and B, and there are many things which are A and B. So there exist multiple other objects which are both not it, but are still working things. Let's take cars again as an example. We have car, we have Toyota, we have Subarus, we have Chevys. If we take the Toyotas out, are there still other objects? Subarus, Chevys, Nissans, which are not Toyotas, but are still working things. Okay. Those are all Chedraks. Those are the questions you can ask. Is it a Chedrak or not? So there must exist multiple other things which are both. Not the subject or characteristic in question, pen, but are still characteristic of the quality of working things. One thing, which is blank and blank, you can fill in the blanks. There exist multiple other objects which are both not it, but still a working thing. So an example, say for the water pitcher, the subset of working things. To be considered a part of a set of working things, there must be multiple things other than water pitchers that are still working things. There must be multiple subsets to make up a set. All it means is for a Toyota to be a kind of car, there should be many other kinds of cars, which are not Toyotas. That's all. And then you can say that Toyota is a member of the set car. It's called car if you don't want to see dependent origination quickly. Or you can say, or you can say, there are many other things which are characteristic of the quality carness, which are not Toyotas. And there's a big difference between these two statements. I'll say them again. You can say that Toyota is a member of the set car called car. Or you can say, there are many other things which are characteristic of the quality carness, which are not Toyotas. And again, you might want to star this one because it's something you got to cook. According to the highest schools of Buddhism, every single perception we ever have until the day we see emptiness directly is mistaken. Every single perception, 65 of them per finger snap, throughout the length of your lives, have been infected by mistaking the mental image for the thing. And somehow that causes all of our suffering. Why? It's hard to hate something when you realize you are doing it. It's hard to get jealous and be attached to a person if you realize that whether or not you get to keep them is totally dependent on you. Told you it was going to be a horse race. Hang in there. So in the reading, you'll come across the most famous logical statement given by Buddhists to non-Buddhists in ancient India. It's the most famous logical statement, right? From Buddhists to non-Buddhists who claim that the sound Om was Takpa, was unchanging, eternal. They said Om is the unchanging, eternal nature of the universe. And Lord Buddha said, come on, it's Vitakpa. It's changing, comes into existence, and is being destroyed millisecond by millisecond. No way is it eternal and unchanging. It is changed 100 times by the time you say it. And I hear it, from it traveling from here to your ears, which we all know there's a delay on Zoom. But even if we were in the same room, it changes. And this is a metaphor for our life. So, the most famous statement in ancient India, Dra Churchen Mitakte Che Pe Chir. Dra Churchen. Churchen is the subject, consider sound. Mitakte, the quality, the assertion, or we can say the drupche chu, they are not unchanging things. Chepe cheer, that's the reason, the talk, because they're made. Well, what about the fact that sounds are changing? Are they takpa or mitakpa? Unchanging or changing? Consider sound. They are not unchanging things because they are made things. So you can prove something by saying, Kadran is sitting here because sound is a changing thing. Doesn't make any sense, but you can say it and you have to get used to it. Because sound is a changing thing, it exists, which is to say, because reality itself exists, which is to say, because I'm standing here, it is truth. So there are 3 examples that happen in Scripture. The set of all things about which you can say they exist. All existing things, right? The set of all things about which you can say they have no self-nature, meaning they have no nature of their own. And the third one is the set of all things about which you can say sounds change, and they are exactly the same. So on to some formal logic. We have 3 sections, right? So let's review. We've talked about the subject and the parts of a logical statement before. We talked about, the subject, the quality that we're trying to prove about the subject, and the reason. So let's take sounds. That's the subject. They are changing things. That's what I'm trying to prove. To whom? Oh, to some ancient non-Buddhist who says that Om is permanent, that Om is unchanging. And then what am I using for my proof? Because they're made. They're made by somebody or something, right? So the subject is sounds. The quality I'm trying to prove about them, they change. And the reason I'm giving to prove that assertion, because they are made. The assertion itself is a combination of elements 1 and 2. Consider sound, they are changing things. The subject plus what? The quality. The quality I'm trying to prove about it, which is to say, they are changing. This is the assertion, the drupja. And then there's the tunchok. Chok means like the whole side of something. In Sanskrit is pakshaya. And in Tibetan Buddhism, they call this the samsaric side of things and the enlightened side of things. So they say like the four directions are pakshayas or chok. In logic, chok means a group of objects. Simply put, a group. Tune is to be in harmony, to get along with somebody. So together, it's a group of similar objects, similar things. Similar to what? Okay, let's take our debate. Let's talk about sounds. Dra, chuchen, pitakte. They are changing things. Chepe, cheer, because they are things that are made. What's the quality we're trying to prove? They are changing things. What would be the whole group or set of things which are similar to things that change? Any changing object. Me, you, Sedona, the rain, the weather. It's the whole set of things which fit that description of the quality you're trying to prove. So in this case, the quality we're trying to prove is they're changing things. Are all of the things in this picture changing things? Pictures, pillars, cows, cars, people, mind, anger, jealousy, love. They're all changing. They all belong to that set of similar cases. They are similar cases to the quality trying to be proven, which is changing things. So why are we talking about this? Not just to fill up another hour. Why does it seem like we are getting more and more complicated? Can't we just have a simple syllogism, 3 things? Later on, we will learn that truth itself depends on whether there are 3 relationships which hold in the syllogism. And if those 3 relationships exist there, you've got truth. You have a good argument and a good reason. If 3 relationships are absent, if any one of them is absent, you've got a bad argument. And what you're saying is false. So you need this group of things to establish 2 of those relationships. So we're just setting you up for your next class. So we have tunchok, and now we have mitunchok. It's the opposite of tunchok. And what would that be? It would be a group or set of everything that is dissimilar. Dissimilar cases. And there are 3 possibilities for all the stuff in the world that is not like a changing thing. So the first one is here, mepa mitunchok. Mepa is a negative. Things that, tunchok, mitunchok, things that don't exist anyway. So horns on the head of a rabbit are a typical classical example in scripture. Riwongira, or what they mistranslate as skyflower, meaning a plant that could grow in mid-air, like a rose that could just sprout and put its roots out in mid-air with no water, no dirt, no sunlight. The second one is, say, Shempa Mitunchok. Shempa Mitunchok. Something other. It's a deceiving name because what it really means is something too big, like all existing things. It's something too big. It's just other in the sense of being too massive to fit in the field of similar cases. So all existing things, it's too big to fit into the family of changing things. It's too fat and to fit into that little car, right? All existing objects is too big to fit all changing things. So you could not call it a member of all the group of similar cases. It has changing things in it, but it's just too big. And it goes beyond the field of similar cases. It goes beyond the group of similar cases. It's too broad to be restricted into what we call changing things. So we call it belonging to the group of dissimilar cases, Shempa Mitunchok, by virtue of being something else, meaning too big. What's too big? Sheja, all existing things, just too big. And then the third one is, say, Gelwa Mitunchok. Gelwa Mitunchok. Directly opposite, directly contradictory. So what would be the Gelwa Mitunchok for changing things? The family of all unchanging things. So what are some unchanging things? Emptiness, empty space, truth. These are all important for establishing whether a statement is true or not, especially for establishing the 5 classical proofs for emptiness. And we have to understand these points to be able to do that. Okay. So we are going to now start on debate from Thursday's class. And this reading talks about 3 different things about debate. It talks about how we stand, how to use a rosary, and how to start an argument. We have a great picture here of how they're using a rosary and how they stand. And then I have a video at the end of class if we have time. Otherwise, I'll put it up and you can watch it on your own of some monks debating. So normally the defender sits down and then the attacker is standing up. Everything is started by the attacker. To be the defender, you just have to sit there, which is not easy. And they can ask you anything about your 12 years of study so far, or your 12 courses that you've studied. They can quote anything out of thousands of pages, and you are defenseless. So the attacker is supposed to pick a really obscure quotation. The defender probably, forgot about it 6 years ago. And then they ask, what does that mean? And the defender has to sit there and listen really carefully. So you come into the debate ground, you come up to the person and you're already like, okay, let's talk about this. You're already like, let's see what he probably hasn't heard about for a while. That's a good debater. If you're lazy, then you would pick something easy. But if you're a good debater, you pick something that is not clear to you. Like, I'm not sure about this thing that she said about the person not being physical or mental. Remember we talked about that Thursday? I'd like to debate that. Can we throw out Eka's body without throwing Eka out? And what is the relationship between those things? So if you're a good debater, if you really get into debating for the right reasons, it brings out things that you are not sure about. And so when you spend time with your Dharma friends in this class, when you do your debating practice together, and I saw that Mike has started one for the English speakers, bring out the things that you're not sure about. See if sometimes you can figure out something, even though none of you knows any more than the other person. Just by talking it over helps a lot. So try to pick questions that you're not sure about. So you start the debate with, do you remember this word from Thursday? Just a few days ago. Everybody say, D. D. This is Manjushri's C syllable. So when you start a debate, very quietly, you go up to the person sitting and you say, whisper in their ear, Di jitar chuchen. Di jitar chuchen. Let's consider this one. Tongpa mi takpa, yimpe cheer. Let's consider emptiness. It's a changing thing. So take the one thing you're most unclear about and bring that up. Comfort level is low. Seeking truth is high. So let's debate this. Going to show how debate is done. So you stand up. I don't have my robes on, but if you were a monk or nun, which you guys aren't, you just be respectful. And you bow down, you pay respect. It's very quiet. You whisper in their ear, and then you step back and present the syllogism. Tongpani chuchen, or here we have Tongni mi takpe yimpe cheer. Let's talk about emptiness. Nupa yinte, it's a working thing. Dunje nupa yimpe cheer, because it performs a function. So you start up here with your mala, not get it caught in my hair. Let's talk about emptiness. It's a working thing because it performs a function, and you slap. And you take a step forward and you're like right in their face, trying to get them off guard. Next slide, there we go. So there are three parts to a syllogism. What is a syllogism? The dictionary says it's a form of deductive reasoning consisting of a major premise and a minor premise and a conclusion. The example in the dictionary is all humans are mortal. The major premise, I am a human. The minor premise, therefore, I am mortal, which is the conclusion. So reasoning from the general to the specific through deduction, also a subtle or spacious piece of reasoning. So syllogism 1. Chuchen. What are we going to talk about? That's the chuchen. In this case, Tongpani chuchen. Let's consider emptiness. Then there's the jupe chu, the quality you're going to try to prove. Nupoyinte. It's a working thing. And then the tak. Duje nupe yimpe cheer. Tak is the reason. Because it performs a function. There we go. So Chuchen is the subject of the debate. It means let's consider. For example, let's consider emptiness. And the subject must have two qualities. The opponent must have perceived the subject with a valid perception. They must be somewhat familiar with the topic. The opponent must be unsure whether or not the subject has the qualities you will assert. Your reasoning is considered incorrect if the opponent already believes what you're trying to prove. Then there's the drupche chu, okay, which is the quality of the subject we're trying to prove. For example, being a working thing. It doesn't even have to exist. You just have to be willing to prove it. You and the opponent must agree that it is the quality you're trying to prove. There is the drupcha, the assertion. That consists of the subject of the debate, the chuchen, and the quality, the jupe chu. So it's the subject and the quality. For example, emptiness is a working thing. Then we have the tak, the reason. And it can include anything you want to say as a reason. Here, for example, because it performs a subject. So your mal is up here, your arm is like up here, and then you come down with a lot of power. And there's all this body language. And then you wait for them to answer. And after a while, if they don't answer, you start an oh. No, everybody, they didn't answer. Everybody say with me, oh, sa. I didn't see anybody doing that with me. Oh, sa. And that's like saying, this is embarrassing. Everybody's going to join in the group, right? And you're sitting there trying to remember where this quotation comes from. And then all of this gets going on. So it gets very animated on the debate ground. Today, though, all you have to learn today is di, chi, char, chu, chen, right? If you want to do it in your own language, at least start with the D. We're not going to change that Sanskrit mantra. We'll leave that alone. Everything else can get translated. So in English, D, Jitar, Chuchen. How about this one? Then you give a small clap, but you don't yell. Then you back off and you get your left foot forward. You can even see them like this, getting ready. And then they say, Tompani Chuchen. Let's talk about Tompani, emptiness. And normally you keep eye contact with the opponent, unless you're so disgusted. You're like, Tompani Chuchen, right? Tompani Chuchen nupa yinte, duje nupe yimpe a cheer. So this is what you would see many times on the debate ground. And people's hands, they get cut open and blood spurting on their face. And I've always thought it was kind of like for teenage boys who have too much energy. And this is a great way to channel the energy, right? And it's a great way to get to the truth. So D, how about this one? Consider emptiness. It's a working thing because it's a thing which performs a function. Right? Again, Chu-Chen is the subject, emptiness. Tompani Chu-Chen. Consider emptiness. Consider this subject. There are two basic requirements for the subject. Again, your opponent must have perceived the object, subject, with a valid perception, with a sema. In other words, you can't debate about, say, Puerto Roja if you don't know Spanish, right? It must be, first of all, something which the opponent knows what it is. The second requirement is the opponent must be unsure of whether or not it is what you say next. They must know what the subject is, and they must be unsure about whether it's the thing you're about to say. You're about to assert that it's a certain thing. You're about to say it's a working thing, and they have to be in doubt about that. In other words, you're starting with an assertion. They have to doubt it. Otherwise, you have no argument, right? You have no debate. And if they don't have doubt about what you say, you've presented an incorrect reason. And that's the way it is in Buddhist logic. You can't argue something to someone that they already accept. We know we only argue with people when they don't see our point of view, right? Something they don't accept, right? So now the Drupchechu. What was the Drupchechu? What was the quality? Nupayinte. It's a working thing. So what's the requirement for something to be a Drupchechu? The quality that you're trying to prove about this Chu-Chen, about this subject, doesn't even have to exist. The definition of the quality, the Drupchechu, that you're trying to prove is simply anything that both of you want to consider the qualities to be proven. Because you can prove something is non-existent. So the idea I'm trying to prove is the combination of number 1 and 2. That emptiness is a working thing. That's called the Drupcha. And then the last part, the tak. What is the definition of a tak? Anything you want to say is a reason. Take emptiness. It's a working thing because the sky was green on the 32nd of January. It's a false reason, but it's a reason. So I just want to go over, review the parts of the syllogism and the Chu-Chen, the subject, the Drupchechu, the quality of the subject you're trying to prove, and the Drupcha, the assertion, and tak, the reason. Know that the greatest teachers in the monastery, who are in front of 1,000 monks, will take a position which is totally wrong. Just to see if one young monk can learn to prove him wrong. Because he is trying to help the other person debate. Debate is about exploring the unknown. It's not about winning or losing. It's about getting to the truth. So that's what we missed on Thursday. And now we're going to go to debate for today. So we're going on with debate for this present class. And all of this stuff we've been talking about, you would have debated all of this by the time you're 13 in the monastery. The first subject you learn, the first thing they learn in how to debate is how to, right? We're talking about our syllogism and how to decide what's a good debate. And after you learn that form, right? It's like learning any kind of form, like Tai Chi form or Aikido form or yoga form. Then you start to get the content of the debate. But they're not allowed to touch the content until they understand the format. So we're giving you pieces of this format. It works like a computer program. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And if a question is framed well, then the person sitting down just has to sit there calmly and say, yes, no, 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 yes. Doesn't follow. Sometimes you might need to clarify the question. Do you mean pot as a concept or a real thing? A vase or a, quote, vase, right? So you're allowed to ask questions and you're allowed to stall. I can't hear you. I didn't catch that. While you're furiously thinking. So there are 4 answers you can give, and we'll learn 2 of them today. So here's our syllogism again. The one about sound. Dra churchen. First, you let the other person know what you're going to talk about. Ti dra churchen. And then you give them the drupcha, the assertion. Mitakte. They are not unchanging. The other person doesn't accept this, right? And then you, And then you say, you give the reason. Here, because they are made. That's the opening of the debate. There are 2 ways that you can respond. When you hear cheer, you have 2 ways to respond, 2 ways to object. Tak majuk. Tak means reason, right? Majuk means not correct. It doesn't exist. So tak majuk is your reason is not correct. Everybody say tak majuk. Tak majuk. No, your reason isn't correct. With emotion, with feeling, not tak majuk, right? Get into it. The second one is kyaba majum. Kyaba means for 2 things to not necessarily be so. It isn't necessarily so. It doesn't follow. Literally, kyaba means to cover. So kyaba majum, ma is a negative. It's not necessarily so. So if something doesn't quite make sense, if it's a little off, then you can use kyaba majum. It's not necessarily so. That doesn't necessarily follow. So let's repeat them after me again, because these are the 2 that you're learning today. Say tak majuk. I don't see people's mouths moving. Come on, you guys. Wake up. Takmadrup means, no, that's not right. And Kyabamajum, what do you mean? It doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't follow. Kyabamajum. You can, if you want to learn the Tibetan, it's really cool, it's fun. And to be relaxed, I would also say debate in your own language, right? So, example, consider the sky. It's green because it has a color. Is it true the sky has a color? Yeah. So you can't say Takmaju. You can say Chabamaju. It's not necessarily so that the sky is green because it has a color, right? Just because the sky has a color doesn't mean it's green. The reason doesn't prove the assertion. It doesn't apply. It doesn't necessarily follow that if something has a color, it has to be green. So I'm going to share with you a third way to answer. If the reason is correct, you just respond by agreeing with them, by saying, yeah, it is yin or yu. It does. Yin or yu. So you just repeat their verb. Example would be, consider the sky or you. Yeah, it does. And then your debate is over. It didn't get very far. Right? So when someone gives you a wrong answer, also, there's another answer. You say, no, tsa. Tsa. You should be ashamed of yourself. Okay? No, tsa. So I'm trying to impress upon you why it's important to debate. Why is it important to do this? Back to the between classes. These are the keys to becoming an enlightened being. This is a key to the higher teaching. This is the key to get out of suffering. If you can cook these things, and you got to do it in meditation, you got to do it in debate, you got to do your tartuk on the couch and think about it. You have to collect goodness, ask for help to deeply understand these things. I don't believe it. I ended before time is up. So your meditation, let me drink some water. Hold on one sec here. Don't forget you'll need a mala when you do your debate. You can get them online if you don't have one. It's fun to do it, right? I see that Yetsue has one. Yeah. Cool. Right there. You put it on your left shoulder when you're debating. And of course, then it slides down your arm as you clap. Meditation, 15 minutes per day. It's an analytical meditation. Trying to detect how you yourself tend to take your mental image of an object as being the object itself. Take something close to you. For Geshe Michael, he took a pot of water because he had to make tea for his Lama all day long. So take something that you're around all the time. Some common object. Maybe it's your computer. And try to catch yourself when you look at it. Fixate on an object which is too perfect. You never see the back of the pot. How do you know there's a back of the pot? Technically, legally, logically speaking, you don't. You don't know if there's the back of a pot. You don't know if there's just a big empty space. You don't see the back of the pot. Behind the pot, looking, can you see it? No, but your mind fills it in. And that's another indication of the truth that you are watching a mental image because it's too good. It's too perfect. So you can also think about it this way. You can never see the whole pot. What you're doing is totally impossible, even if you sit here and think about it logically. You can't see a whole pot without focusing on the left side and then moving your eyes to the right side. But then you're not looking at a whole pot anymore. If you don't look at the left side and the right side, you can't see the pot either. You can't see the whole thing at once. And that's why your eye is always moving, always tracking, right? It's picking up clues. Then the mind is turning it into a perfect dunshi, a perfect image. You think you're watching Gyelse teaching. You're not. You're seeing my left hand, my right hand, the left side of my head, the right side of my head. That's all you're seeing. You're seeing indications. And then your mind is gluing them together and saying, there's a woman sitting up there, a whole woman. It's impossible. You can't be seeing the whole thing at once. You don't know where my hand is by the time you see my head. You can't see the whole Gyelse, but you think you are. So there's something fishy here. You can meditate on it like that. To relate that to quality and characteristic, think about Gyelse-ness, the mental image of Gyelse and the parts, the data you receive through your eyes of Gyelse, and try to compare those three things. Try and see if you can find a difference between them. Let's all take a big breath. The horse race is over. And let's offer are in the process of creating here so that everyone can be free of suffering. Sashi Puki Juching Metok Drum Rirab Mingshi Ninde Gempadi Sange Shingdu Mikte Urwagi Jokun Namdak Shingma Chuparsho Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnir Yatayami. Gewadi Kewokun Sunam Yeshe Soksokshing Sunam Yeshe Lejungwe Dampa Kuni Toparsho. So that is basically the end of class for today, but I'd love to show you this video. If you want to stick around for a few moments, let me share it again. I had to bring it up. Okay. And then there's another one. Let's see. I really like this one. So I don't know if you had a chance to catch any of what they were saying. The old man and the older monk in the first one, he said Otsa at some point. And then in the second one, there was a mitapa something or other. I just found these, on the internet. So you're welcome to go and do your own search. And because we're not together in person, it's really hard to show you how to debate. So I wanted to give you some sense of the liveliness of it and the intensity of it. So Venerable Utpala and I would like to do a demonstration for you at some point. We'll see if it happens or not, but just to have a little taste. And it's about getting to the truth of things. And this is when you do a Geshe degree, this is what happens. You have a question and you debate it, and the whole monastery, whoever wants to, attacks you. And you have to hold your ground, and you have to think fast on your feet. Ben Kramer is really talented at this. He's got a mind that works really, really fast. It always impresses me. My mind is much slower. I have to cook things. It's not as fast as his. So don't worry about it. Get together with your friends. It doesn't have to be that intense. And if you're intimidated by debating, just discuss it. Bring the things you don't understand to your fellow students. and say, hey, I don't understand it. I also believe that there is a study group for Russian-speaking students. So we've got an English-speaking and a Russian-speaking group that are studying and debating together. So if somebody else needs to create another group, please do that. Oh my God, there's 83. Is there something I need to see in the chat? Maybe not. Looks like it's just good information. So Thursday, Venerable Utpala will be teaching class 4, same time, and have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you on Thursday. And don't get overwhelmed. Just let it soak in, right? And you always have the videos to come back to. Oh, I see Barbara has posted a Spanish group as well, which is fantastic. So we're all here to help each other. So see you all on Thursday. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.